So in the last lecture, I was talking about the importance of basal ganglia for reinforcement learning, and now you will see it in action. We use action selection. This great paper, I will show you, but basal ganglia is essentially an action selection system. The basal ganglia has been associated with both cognitive level decision making and movement decision making. But I like this one more because I like analysis. And it is connected to many areas in the brain, including motor function, but also prefrontal cortex, orbitofrontal cortex, and interior cingulate cortex, which are not motor control areas directly, but are associated with higher order decision making. So your cortex has relation with thalamus, and the basal ganglia, striatum, is inhibiting many areas of cortex. Remember first lecture? It had inhibitory, the dynamics of inhibitory, and the dynamics of exhibitory. This nonlinear dynamical system, now you will see how different regions of brain are acting like some of them are inhibitory at some time, some of them are excitatory. And for example, basal ganglia is inhibiting many areas of cortex in one decision. For example, a mouse, it selects whether to think about this danger, cat, or wants some sinful things such as eating cheese, and inhibition such as loving another rat. And a direct pathway is this pathway, because there are different pathways, direct pathways and indirect pathway. So thalamus gives excitatory projection to your cerebral cortex. Again, it excites your striatum neurons, but it inhibits the globus pallidus. But the indirect pathway is a little bit different. First, striatum gives inhibitory signals to globus pallidus and then subthalamic nucleus, but through this gateway, through this thalamus, it comes back. Now I want to explain another beautiful article of this great team in KTH University, amazing team, and but this one, action selection. Go, no go, it refers to the direct pathway and indirect pathway, and it's a different work. So there are several studies that have shown strong involvement of basal ganglia in action selection and dopamine-dependent learning. The dopaminergic signal to striatum, the input stage of basal ganglia, has been commonly described as coding a reward prediction error. The difference between predicted and actual reward. The reward prediction error has been hypothesized to be critical in the modulation of synaptic plasticity in corticostriatal synapses in the direct and indirect pathway. So this is direct and indirect pathway. The computations in our model are inspired by Bayesian inference and synaptic plasticity changes depend on a three-factor Hebbian-Bayesian learning rule based on coactivation of pre- and post-synaptic units and on the value of RPE. The model builds on the modified actor-critic architecture, very important paradigm in reinforcement learning, by the way, and implements the direct and indirect pathway. So the direct pathway, we call it go. The indirect pathway that I showed you was no-go. So in simple terms, the actor-critic is temporal difference version of policy gradient. I have a playlist for reinforcement learning, so you can just review what I say. But in this paper, this is a great slide from Professor Sergey Levin, amazing professor in Berkeley, maybe the best person in the world can teach reinforcement learning. And of course, his focus was in robotics in Berkeley, But this is the framework. You sample, you generate sample because you have a policy. You have some policy, so you can generate some. Because you have a state, you can you know what is the probability of each action on the robot or anything else. But here we will focus on our brain. So we know our state, some neurons are active, and dependent on that, we generate some actions. Just exciting different neurons inside your brain. So we sample it, and then we fit your value to sample reward sums. And then this is advantage, by the way, advantage function, reward function plus value minus value. So you have to do two different things. You're updating the parameters of your policy because pi, your policy, is dependent on the parameter theta. So you need to update it. But you make sure that in part 2, when you're fitting your value function is dependent on the phi parameter. So we have two different parameters. V has phi parameter. Your policy, if you want to generate it, has theta parameter. And so you get sensory motor. It comes here. From limbic system comes here. By the way, your cortex has two general, of course there are more than that, but let's focus on associative and sensory motor in this article. And these are, dopamine is a kind of neuromodulatory. We have neurotransmitters, and because we have either inhibitory or exhibitory, but we also have neuromodulators with changes in population. For example, when the dopamine comes, it changes lots of neurons. So lots of neurons, suddenly a group of them becomes inhibitory, or suddenly a group of them becomes excitatory. It's not like our naive deep learning that everything is fixed and we don't distinguish between excitatory and inhibitory. It's unfortunate that we do this. But in our brain, neurons are more valuable than just a single things that we just treat inhibitory and excitatory, treat them the same. There are two different roles for different purposes. There is a purpose behind that. Information about the current state of the world, the internal state of agent, is received by basal ganglia from the cortex and thalamus. Basal ganglia would then provide the selection mechanism to decide on the best action to perform, given that information. It has been shown that neurons that in the striatum can encode state and action value. So now you understand how it encodes your state and action value. It is in your striatum inside your basal ganglia. Action can be performed when inhibition from output nuclei of basal ganglia is removed. Whenever the inhibition is removed, the action is performed. Very beautiful. The output nuclei of basal ganglia, internal segments of globus pallidus, and the substantia nigra paracompactus project to the thalamus and also to the brainstem motor command centra. The high resting activity of these nuclei keeps the target motor structures under tonic inhibition. An action can be performed when inhibition from the output nuclei of basal ganglia is removed, when the motor command centra are disinhibited. The inhibition from the basal ganglia output nuclei can be decreased via the direct pathway and enhanced via indirect pathway. So this is your cortex, all cerebral cortex, and here are your actions. This is your error, reward prediction error, if you remember that. And there are two pathways. It either goes from cortex through this pathway, we call it go. It either goes through another pathway, which we call it no-go. And I showed you the anatomy of that. And here it generates the action. So cortex and basal ganglia is very important. The go pathway selects which action to perform, while no-go pathway can actively prevent non-compatible action from being selected. So it's like inhibitory system, the no-go system. So just like before, we write formal model description like this because we assume that these are independent. So for simplicity, we can write this. And then the condition on action. For example, we say, what is the, you just use Bayes rule because if you know the action, we can understand what is the probability of that. And because of this independence, you can just multiply them. And here now you have the probability of each of the actions. For example, your mini column unit AJ. This is your mini column AJ. For example, unit is active when it is 1 and silent when it is 0. Within the same hypercolumn. And so P of X sub I, this factor can now be formulated like this. And just take the logarithm and it becomes this. And now, because these are important, we call this variable, because we use them, beta. And now this difference, this one now with this new definition, the difference equation can be written like this. And sigma is 1 for currently active state unit. And just like previous lectures, you just use exponential running averages to smooth it. And what is important is that for a selection of an action, the actions of the go and no-go pathway are usually combined. This can be done in different ways. The activation Sj, this one, represents the log propensity to select the action Aj given the current state X. And a softmax activation function with gain gamma then gives the probability distribution over A on which a random draw will pick the action that becomes the selected one. And so this is the error and this is the action. However, if the value passes negative, the binary vector A of the go or either no-go pathway is changed like this. So it depends on you. If you use actor model, this is your S. If you use actor and go only, this. But you can also use the reward because the log of reward could be S. Or you could combine the actor with the reward prediction. And so this is the go pathway, and these dots are the sub-go, are the no-go. And the difference is important because one variable is increasing, is making it more excitatory, and other variable is making it less excitatory, and we call it inhibitory. So there is a war just like a war between God and Satan. One of them pushes down, the other one pushes up. And so this is an illustration of a state action reward mapping.